Welcome to Stage Explorations, where we interview the theater creatives and artists from the theater world, those who perform on stage that the audience sees, and those behind the theater stage that the audience almost never sees. I am a journalist and theater fan, Buell Brown, and today's guest is...
Hi, my name is Matt Schatz. I am the author of the play The Past, A Present Yet to Come, an origin story of A Christmas Carol. If you'd like to learn more about this play, please listen to this conversation.
My first question is, when did you first fall in love with theater, and why did you have to be part of the theater world?
Okay, well, when did I first fall in love with theater, and why did I have to be part of the theater world? I think what I fell in love with was initially writing. So from an early age, writing was something that I did really well. I was also specifically a good rhymer, and I could write like little poems and raps and songs and things like that. So I knew, I wanted to be involved. I knew I should be a writer in some way, and I wanted to figure out a way that I could make a living as a writer as I started to, get into high school and got older. I loved movies, so my first instinct was to be a screenwriter. So I went to college and studied screenwriting, and I took to it, and I really liked it. But sort of towards the end of my time there, undergrad, I started to sort of think about plays, and it seemed to me that movies are really, it's quite a young medium, and it was like 100 years old. And I was sort of interested in sort of the history of where it all started, and drama, and it's sort of, thousands of years old. So I started reading plays. I would just go to, whatever Barnes and Noble or Borders and buy whatever plays they had published, and I started reading them. And I think, I at first I was really interested, I loved the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, and I read that play, and then I really got interested in playwriting. So I in senior year of college, I worked at a pharmacy. I wrote a play about working at the pharmacy. I sent it to a couple of grad schools, got into a bunch, and got in, and ended up going to Carnegie Mellon. And then suddenly I was calling myself a playwright. And so I wasn't the kind of person that did a lot of acting, though when I was younger, I did sort of, I went to theater camp and did things like that, but I wasn't, as sort of puberty hit, I got kind of self-conscious and didn't want to be on stage anymore, but I still wanted to sort of be part of it and be a writer. So yeah, that's sort of how I got into theater. And I also think I liked the idea that people knew playwrights' names. You go, a film director's name, but you don't often know the screenwriter's name. So I think I like the idea that, they say, okay, this is a Neil Simon play, this is a Wendy Wasserstein play, or whatever. And often you say this is a Martin Scorsese movie or something. So I like that idea sort of as as with an ego, and as my own vanity. I like the idea of people knowing. I sort of cared more about that than I did making money, which is stupid. I've come to find out, but I still really care about theater, and theater still is the thing. Even though I do work in TV and I write screenplays, I write for TV. Theater is still the thing I care most about for some strange, stupid reason.
When did you truly fall in love with playwriting? And when did it go from an interest to obsession?
When did I truly fall in love with playwriting? From the first time I think that I read my first play, I think I thought to myself, I can do this. This is something I can do. I'm very auditory, and I like words and the sound that words make and the rhythms of speech. So I think, from reading my first plays and trying to write them, and sort of seeing actors and people that are or even other writers read them, hearing them out loud. That's when I really said, "Oh, this is exciting! This is a fun thing to do, and if you can call this work, then that's a fun way to sort of have a job." So I think from the get-go, of course you're always nervous, and you sometimes you hate what you've written, but more often than not, it always thrills me to have people read what I've written aloud, or perform what I've written aloud. So yeah, it's something, and I've kept doing it. So, and I've been doing it for, 25 years now or something. So, it's obviously there's something I get out of it.
One of my favorite questions is the theater experience. Why is that such a unique format, both for the actors and the audience?
Why is the theater experience such a unique format and such an? I just think it's the element of something being live and sort of having to sort of understand something in real time with a group of other people in the audience, and you're all sort of experiencing this communal thing, even if it's 5-10 other people. It's, to me, it's always different than either even watching a TV show or seeing a movie. There's something really exciting about it, and it's also like ephemeral. You can't capture it. It could be different from from one night to the next. And so it's like always it feels like always like a tightrope walk. And I can't, it's like that the moment, like, when the lights go down, you're sitting in the theater, and you're waiting for something to happen. The thing that happens, it could be the most boring thing ever, but there's that moments of sort of anticipation. It's almost like when you go, first going uphill on a roller coaster. So there's a lot of excitement there. I also just, I rarely leave the house. So it's if you're going to leave the house, it's always a nice thing to go and sit in an audience and be told a story, because stories are what makes us human. So
where did the idea come from for the past, the present, yet to come, and why did you have to write it?
Where did the idea for the past, present, yet to come from? I think so. I was looking back at my emails. I see that it was in 2021. So it was 2 years ago, Christmas time, maybe around this time 2 years ago. I would think I was taking a walk with my baby. Now I have two, but first baby. And I saw, I think, ads. I think it was for the maybe CTG's A Christmas Carol with Bradley Whitford. And I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about how I really like A Christmas Carol. I've always liked it, and I've seen many iterations, and I've read it, and I've seen, I've seen the Muppets, and I remember I grew up with the Disney one where Mickey plays, Bob Cratchit. And I've always liked it, but to me, there's always something that, like, I didn't buy about it. And I think the thing that I didn't buy about it is the magic of it. And I think that I have a hard time believing in magic, whether it be a story on stage. It just never really resonates with me. The kind of magic that I believe in, and I think is real, is the magic of art and the magic of the theater. So I had this idea that, what if the whole thing that Scrooge experiences was a play being put on for his benefit that he was unaware of. And I love the idea, obviously I'm a theater maker and a playwright. And so I love the idea of a bunch of people getting together to basically put on a show for one audience member, Scrooge, to sort of try to change him. So that was how it started. And I initially, because I write in TV and I like to feed my family and film, I initially had the idea to pitch it as a movie. And I had a production company that was, all last year interested in it. We pitched it a bunch of places, and it got some good, nice responses. And I wrote a big pitch and everything for it. I think, there was that one with I didn't see it, but there was like a modern day retelling of A Christmas Carol with was Ryan Reynolds or something. I try not to see anything. And the sort of the feeling was like that one, maybe that wasn't killing it at the box office, maybe. And then also it's like we've sort of had we've had a lot of it, that we have it every year. We all go see it every year. So I was like, well, instead of me pitching it, and I had, a pretty big company attached and everything, and maybe possibly exciting actor to play Charles Dickens that was attached. But I said, let me write it as a play, just sort of as a proof of concept, almost. And also it's fun to write a play. So I decided to write it as a play. Of course, the play turned out totally different than the movie would have turned out. Just three actors, and sort of like all the characters that I imagined for the movie are sort of off screen and all this stuff. But so that was how that began. And of course, like I said before, I love theater is my true love. So sort of imagining as a play first, and maybe it's the way it was meant to be. Maybe at some point in the future I'll try to make it into a movie or something. That was the genesis of the idea. Yeah, and I also at the same time I had this other idea for another Dickens related story. There's this story I wanted to write a musical about this true story of Dickens, who had this tenant later in his life, a Jewish woman who took issue with the the character Fagin the Jew and Oliver Twist, and sort of he was sort of converted from sort of an anti-Semite to less of one. So there was this. I wanted to write sort of they write these letters. I wanted to write sort of an epistolary musical song cycle or something, because I'm a composer as well. I write musicals. So I didn't do that, and I sort of incorporated that theme also into this play. So it was sort of like two Dickens things in one. So yeah, I think that's where it came from.
Tell us a story arc for the past, the present, yet to come.
Sure. So it's about a young man named Fred, an entrepreneur, and he's from the Dickens story, Scrooge's nephew. He is a young aspiring businessman, family man. He wants to. He has a nightcap business, hats not drinks, that he's trying to sort of get funding for, and he has this idea to play a Christmas trick on his uncle. He sees this play called "The Goblins Who Stole a Sexton," which was based on a story from Charles Dickens. The Pickwick Papers, I believe. He sees this production and he has this idea to sort of put on this play with a similar story. The Goblins Who Stole a Sexton is like very similar to A Christmas Carol. It's like, goblins come in the middle of the night and it's a sexton and he's got to change his ways, and they show him the past and the future. So he has this idea to put on this play to sort of make his uncle Scrooge, who sort of has become this sort of bad man over time. He has this idea to put on a play to sort of change him, and he really loves his uncle because his uncle is a businessman, and he aspires to be this great, rich entrepreneurial businessman. So to do so, he meets with the sort of the impresario female producer who produced the Goblins play, gets her on board, and then to write it, they hook up with this guy Charles Boz Dickens, who's maybe not doing so great. He had a couple hits and he's kind of a little bit down on his luck and needs the dough. So they get him to write it, and then conflict of all various kinds ensues. Whether like anytime you try to put on a play, conflict happens, and in this case, Dickens, doesn't love this producer who produced the other play. It turns out without his knowing, and all this other kind of stuff. And Dickens, in my version, is kind of like this womanizing, mumbly character who you think will be eloquent, but only writes eloquently, doesn't speak or act eloquently, or in a dignified manner. So yeah, it's about them trying to put on this play and all the crazy, wacky things that can happen when three people get the idea for some reason to put on a theatrical production.
Tell us the main themes of your play.
What are the main themes of the play? There's sort of the expected themes of sort of redemption and sort of looking at our past and growing and sort of the themes that are in the source material, as it were, A Christmas Carol. But also there's a theme of what art can do, how an artist takes real life and has to change it and turn it into art, which is a theme that I think a lot about and write a lot about. There's sort of redemption of all the characters. They all sort of have to make changes. There's also this theme of sort of Dickens anti-Semitism, or probably Jew hatred, which probably would be the term at the time. That I did when I wrote it. It's always timely, but it seems even more timely now, unfortunately. Really about sort of the power of stories. And why we make theater and why we make art, and if the point of art is to change us or just to educate us or just to entertain us, or all three, or one of those, and sort of all those questions. And it's just about three people becoming friends.
In the press release, it also mentions lots of puns. You want to talk about that?
Sure. Well, some people say that puns are the lowest form of humor, and the people that say that I find to be really unfunny. I actually love puns. I love sort of wordplay in all my work. I think there's a lot of wordplay. I try not to make it, too self-conscious, but when you're dealing with writers, you're dealing with people, who are smart and folks in Victorian England who are people of letters. You can have some fun with wordplay. So there's that stuff. There's that stuff in the play. There's a lot of, because we have Dickens as a main character. He's sort of and he's no stranger to wordplay, though he claims he doesn't like puns, but there's puns in his stuff. So who's lying? Yeah, I mean, so I just love that stuff. I'm a lyricist, a musical theater writer too, and I just, nothing delights me more than a sort of joke based on misunderstandings of words or even rhyming words and or surprising turns of phrase. Those things are sort of like and I have a mind that sort of leaps at puns and rhymes and things like that. So it's going to be, I enjoy it. So my thought and hope is that an audience enjoys it as well. And I think some people do.
Very important question. What do you want the audience to get out of your play?
What do I want the audience to get out of my play? I want them to feel like it was worth them leaving the house for the night. I want them to be entertained. I want them to maybe be moved. I want them to laugh. And I want them to maybe leave the theater also asking important and unanswerable questions, which I think is our responsibility as theater artists, is to make our audience ask important and unanswerable questions. Why should people come to see this play? If you're a fan of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, I think you'll enjoy this play. And if you're not a fan, I think you'll also enjoy it. If you're sick of it, it takes the sort of a story we all know and love and have known for most of our lives, most of us probably, and sort of turns it on its ear and attempts to sort of give an origin story to the origin story of Christmas. Really, when we think about Christmas in America and probably, and I guess in England, we may think of the religious aspects, but you also may think of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. If you like that stuff, you'll enjoy it. I think if you're sort of thinking about sort of what this play is, I sometimes think it's like, if you're familiar with Tom Stoppard's or the movie Shakespeare in Love, what Shakespeare in Love sort of does for Shakespeare, I'm sort of attempting to do for Dickens in this play. So that's if that's a way to think about the show, maybe that's helpful. Hi, my name is Matt Schatz. I am the author of the play The Past, A Present Yet to Come, and I hope you'll come see this new take on A Christmas Carol.
Thank you for listening or watching this podcast episode of Stage Explorations. To learn more about the theater creative and more theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations, go to www.stageexplorations.com. Once again, that is www.stageexplorations.com. There is no space between stage and explorations. You may find more videos, podcasts, and information about this theater creative and other theater creatives and artists on Stage Explorations YouTube channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the theater.